Agyapong, a wealthy and influential businessman and known for his astute mind and keen sense of business. Despite his success, he often pondered the true loyalty and character of his family. One evening, Agyapong decided to take a bold step to uncover the truth. He hatched a plan to pretend to be sick and blind, seeking to observe how his family would treat him and what would become of his companies in his supposed absence. Before putting his plan into action, Agyapong consulted with his trusted lawyer, Mr. Owusu, and his longtime friend and medical doctor, Dr. Sarpong. Agyapong. Mr. Owusu, Dr. Sarpong, thank you both for meeting with me on such short notice. Mr. Owusu. Of course, Mr. Agyapong. What can we do for you? Agyapong. I've been contemplating something rather unconventional. I want to pretend to be sick and blind, to see how my family handles the situation and what will happen to my businesses when I am perceived to be incapacitated or dead. Dr. Sarpong. That's quite a drastic measure, Agyapong. Are you sure about this? Agyapong. Absolutely. I need to know who truly cares for me and who is merely after my wealth. I have to be certain about the rightful heir to my company. Mr. Owusu, I understand your concerns. We'll need to set things up properly. I'll create a separate account and transfer half of your wealth into it, ensuring that you're financially secure no matter what happens. Dr. Sarpong. And I'll provide the necessary medical documentation to support your condition. We'll have to make it believable. With their help, Agyapong's plan was set into motion. 3 weeks later, while on his way home, Agyapong called his wife. Hello, dear. I'm not feeling well and I can't drive. Could you come and pick me up? Mrs. Agyapong. What happened? Are you all right? Agyapong. I don't know. I just feel very weak. Please come quickly. Mrs. Agyapong hurriedly left the house and drove to where Agyapong was waiting. She found him slumped in the driver's seat, looking pale and disoriented. She helped him into the passenger seat and drove home. Upon reaching home, Agyapong's condition seemed to worsen. He claimed he couldn't see and felt extremely weak. The news of his sudden illness quickly spread among his children. Ajay, the 35-year-old elder son, Appia, the 30-year-old second son, Amma, the 27-year-old third daughter, and Asabia, the 23-year-old youngest daughter. The family doctor arrived at the Agyapong residence to examine him thoroughly. After taking blood samples and conducting a series of tests, he returned a week later with a grave report. Dr. Sarpong. Mr. Agyapong, I have the results. It appears you are suffering from liver cirrhosis and kidney disease. Additionally, there's a blood clot in your brain which has led to a stroke and affected your eyesight. The family was initially diligent in their care for Agyapong. They ensured he had the best medical treatment, a healthy diet, and a comfortable environment to recover. However, as months passed, the strain began to show. The novelty of the situation wore off, and their dedication waned. The reality of long-term care started to weigh heavily on them. Agyapong's condition demanded constant attention, and as time went on, his family grew weary. They began to neglect his needs, leaving most of the caregiving duties to the house staff. The once attentive family members became increasingly distant, absorbed in their own lives and concerns. One afternoon, Mrs. Agyapong called for a board meeting to discuss the situation. She informed the board members of Agyapong's deteriorating health and her decision to take over the company's operations, with Ajay as her right hand. Mrs. Agyapong. Given my husband's condition, I will be stepping in to manage the company, with Ajay assisting me. We need to ensure that the business continues to thrive during this challenging time. Despite their lack of experience, Mrs. Agyapong and Ajay assumed control of the company. They ignored the advice of seasoned executives and industry experts, believing they could manage on their own. This decision led to a series of missteps and poor decisions that began to erode the company's stability. Agyapong's condition worsened as his wife and elder son, Ajay, continued to neglect him and poorly manage the company. Mrs. Agyapong, overwhelmed with the responsibilities of running the business, had little time or interest left for her ailing husband. Days would pass without her even stepping into his room. Agyapong often lay in bed for days without a bath, his basic needs ignored by the very people who should have cared for him most. Meanwhile, Mrs. Agyapong funneled significant sums of money to her church pastor, making extravagant offerings. Jay, on the other hand, frequently withdrew company funds for lavish trips to Dubai with his wife and children, further draining the company's resources. Amma, Agyapong's third daughter, was deeply troubled by the situation. One evening she confronted her mother about the neglect her father was enduring. "Amma, Mother, this isn't right. We need to take better care of Daddy. He's suffering and we're just ignoring him. We should take him abroad for proper treatment." They were in Agyapong's room, and he listened intently, though his eyes remained closed. "Mrs. Agyapong, Amma, you're being ridiculous. Didn't you hear what the doctor said? Your father's condition is terminal. It would be a waste of money to send him abroad." "Amma, how can you say that? He's our father. He deserves the best care we can provide, no matter what." Mrs. Agyapong and Ajay's authoritarian management style led to an atmosphere of fear and resentment among the company's employees. They frequently shouted at staff, sacked employees for minor mistakes, and dismissed anyone who dared to challenge their authority. This toxic environment caused many experienced workers to resign, and their replacements were often inexperienced and ill-equipped to handle the company's operations. Within 8 months, the company was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. The Agyapong family convened a meeting to discuss the dire situation. The mood was tense, with frustration and blame hanging in the air. "Mrs. Agyapong, we need to do something quickly to save the company. I suggest we sell one of our family houses to inject some cash into the business." "Appiah, absolutely not. This is all your fault, and Ajay's. You both mismanaged everything, and now you want to sell our property to fix your mistakes?" The argument quickly escalated. Appiah, who had been quietly stewing over the mismanagement, finally exploded in anger. "Appiah, you two have ruined everything. You treated the employees like dirt and drove the company into the ground." "Ajay, how dare you speak to us like that? We did what we thought was best." "Appiah, best? By abusing your power and wasting money on luxuries and donations to the church. You've destroyed Father's legacy." Shouting turned into a physical altercation as Appiah and Ajay began to exchange blows. Their punches and shouts filled the room with chaos. Amma, witnessing the fight, could no longer contain her frustration and anger. "Amma, stop it! Both of you, just stop! Is this what we've come to? Fighting over the remains of what Father built, while completely ignoring his health and well-being?" A voice cut through the noise, bringing a moment of silence as her brothers paused, panting and glaring at each other. "Amma, Father needs us, and all you two can think about is the company and money. Have you forgotten the man who sacrificed so much for us? We need to focus on what truly matters." The room fell silent as the family members absorbed Amma's words. The realization of their misplaced priorities dawned upon them, and the weight of their actions began to sink in. Despite the family's initial attempts at unity and rebuilding, deeper issues continued to surface. The youngest daughter, Asabia, showed no interest in the family affairs or the business. She was more focused on funding her boyfriend and indulging in a lifestyle of nightclubs and parties, often taking money from her mother and elder brother without much thought about the consequences. Appia, the second son, was similarly disengaged. His main concern was securing his share of the inheritance to start his own business. This attitude often put him at odds with the rest of the family, leading to frequent arguments and tensions. With the company still struggling and internal family conflicts intensifying, Mrs. Agyapong made a desperate decision. She sold one of the family houses, hoping to inject much-needed capital into the business. Half of the proceeds went into the company, while she kept the rest as a personal safety net. The sale of the family house only added fuel to the fire. Appia, feeling betrayed by his mother's unilateral decision, erupted in anger. Appia, how could you sell the house without consulting us? This isn't just your decision to make. Mrs. Agyapong, I did what I thought was best for the company and the family. We needed the money. Appia, you're destroying this family with your decisions. The argument quickly escalated, with Appia and Ajay nearly coming to blows once again. Amma, distressed by the constant fighting, tried to intervene. Amma, please everyone, we need to stop this. We're tearing each other apart. Father needs us to be united, not at each other's throats. Amma, heartbroken and desperate, went to her father's bedside. She held his hand gently and spoke softly, hoping her words would reach him. Amma, Daddy, I hope you can hear me. Please recover for us. They are destroying your reputation. Everything you worked for is going down, including our family. We need you to put things right. Her voice wavered with emotion as she fought back tears, the weight of the family's troubles bearing down on her. One evening, Mrs. Agyapong returned home after a long day at the office. As she entered the house, she was hit by an unpleasant smell. She assumed someone had forgotten to flush the toilet, but upon checking, she found everything in order. The smell seemed to be coming from her husband's room. When she approached Agyapong, she found that he had soiled himself. Her frustration boiled over, and she lashed out in anger. So, if you can't speak or hear, can't you at least use a sign to call for help? This is disgusting. Her harsh words echoed in the room. She called the house staff to come and clean him up, instructing them to put a diaper on him. Whenever Mr. Agyapong was alone, he found himself crying softly, overwhelmed by the betrayal and neglect he felt from his family. Mr. Agyapong, so this is how my whole family is treating me just because I'm sick? Wow, I made sure my kids never lacked anything in life. I gave them the best care, including my wife. But now they have ignored me. His tears were a mixture of pain and disbelief, his heart heavy with sorrow and disappointment. News of Mr. Agyapong's deteriorating health eventually reached his extended family in the village. Concerned and eager to offer their support, they decided to travel to Accra to visit him. The journey was long, but their love and concern for him kept their spirits high. Upon arriving at the gate of the Agyapong residence, they were met with an unexpected and harsh reception. Mrs. Agyapong, what are you all doing here? Uncle Kwame, we heard about Agyapong's condition and came to see him. We want to support him and check on his health. Mrs. Agyapong, you're not welcome here. Go back to the village. We don't need your help. The extended family was stunned by her words. They had traveled a long way, hoping to see their beloved relative, only to be turned away at the gate. Auntie Efua, but we are his family. We care about him. How can you turn us away, Mrs. Agyapong? I said, leave. We have everything under control. Your presence here is unnecessary. Heartbroken, the extended family had no choice but to return to the village. As they made their way back, they discussed the situation and vowed to find another way to help Agyapong. Later that evening, Amma returned home from work and noticed her mother's unusually stern expression. Amma, Mother, what happened today? You seem upset. Mrs. Agyapong, your father's family showed up unannounced, thinking they could barge in here and take over. I sent them back to the village. Amma, what? They came all this way to see him. How could you turn them away? Mrs. Agyapong, we don't need their interference. We're managing just fine. Amma, disturbed by her mother's actions, decided to visit her father and share the news. Amma, Daddy, your family from the village came to see you today. Mother turned them away. They traveled all the way here to support you. Amma, visiting her father, spoke to him with the hope of lifting his spirits, but soon realized that he could not hear her. His condition had worsened to the point where he was almost completely isolated from those around him. Amma, Daddy, I wish you could hear me. We need you to get better. Please, don't give up. Despite her efforts, it became clear that her words were not reaching him. This realization filled her with even greater determination to ensure he was not abandoned. Mrs. Agyapong had taken over everything, controlling access to her husband and making decisions without consulting anyone. Despite Agyapong's support for his extended family and many others, anyone who tried to visit him was denied access. Mrs. Agyapong was part of a special women's group that met regularly. During one of their meetings, she confided in her friends about her husband's condition and the strain it was putting on her. Mrs. Agyapong, ever since Agyapong fell ill, I haven't had any intimacy. It's been so long since I felt close to anyone. One of her friends, Billionaire, who was known for her bluntness, gave her some controversial advice. Billionaire, you need to wise up, my friend. You're not too old to enjoy life. There are energetic young men out there who can satisfy you. You deserve to be happy. 3 days later, Billionaire introduced her to a young, energetic man named Kwesi, who she believed could fulfill Mrs. Agyapong's needs. Initially hesitant, Mrs. Agyapong found herself drawn to Kwesi's charm and youthful energy. What started as casual meetings quickly developed into a secret affair. She began to spend more time away from home, neglecting her responsibilities and her husband even further. Amma, noticing her mother's frequent absences and the worsening neglect of her father, grew increasingly concerned. She confronted her mother one evening. Amma, Mother, where have you been? Father's condition is getting worse, and he needs us now more than ever. Mrs. Agyapong, I'm doing everything I can. Amma, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. Amma, pressure or not, we can't abandon him. He needs our love and support. Amma, filled with anger and frustration, left her mother after their heated confrontation. She knew her father needed more than just her support. He needed his entire family to rally around him. Determined to make a difference, as she called her brothers and sister to explain the situation and plead for their help. Amma, we need to come together and support Daddy. He's in a terrible state and needs our attention now more than ever. Ajay, Amma, he's old. We can't waste our time. We need to focus on our futures. Appia, I agree with Ajay. We've done enough. We can't keep putting our lives on hold for him. Asabia, I'm with them. We need to think about our own lives. Returning home with her newly found boyfriend, Kwesi, Mrs. Agyapong introduced him to her children under the pretense that he was her new driver. Mrs. Agyapong, Everyone, this is Kwesi. He's going to be my new driver because I'm not feeling well these days and can't drive myself." The reaction was mixed. Some of the children accepted her explanation, while others, particularly Amma, were vehemently opposed. Amma: "Mother, this is wrong. We don't need a driver. We need to focus on taking care of Daddy." Despite Amma's objections, Kwesi moved into the house, further straining the already fragile family dynamics. Every night, Mrs. Agyapong would sneak out of her room and visit Kwesi, continuing their secret affair under the same roof where her husband lay bedridden. Despite previous attempts to stabilize the company, Mrs. Agyapong and Ajay had once again mismanaged its finances, leading to another crisis. Desperate for a solution, they proposed selling 2 cars and another family house to inject money into the struggling business. A family meeting was called, and the atmosphere was charged with tension and frustration. Ajay: "We need to sell 2 cars and one of the houses to get the company back on track." Appia: "This is ridiculous. We keep selling off our assets to fix your mistakes. At this rate, we'll have nothing left." Asabia: "I agree with Appia. We need to find another solution. We can't keep doing this." Amma: "We should focus on managing the company better rather than constantly selling our properties." Growing increasingly frustrated, Appia made a bold suggestion. Appia: "Why don't we just share father's properties now? If we don't, we'll end up with nothing." Mrs. Agyapong: "That's not possible. Your father is still alive, and we can't divide his properties while he's still here." Appia: "Then we need to find out if there's a will. Maybe father made arrangements we don't know about." The family decided to call their lawyer, Mr. Owusu, to see if it was legally possible to divide Mr. Agyapong's properties or if there was a will. Mr. Owusu arrived later that day to address their concerns. Mr. Owusu: "I understand you have questions about Mr. Agyapong's estate. Let me clarify that as long as he is alive, his properties cannot be divided without his consent." Amma: "But is there a will? Did he make any arrangements for us?" Mr. Owusu: "Unfortunately, no. Mr. Agyapong had planned to make a will, but he was struck down by his illness before he could do so." The news left the family disappointed and anxious about the future. They had no clear direction on how to manage the company's crisis without further depleting their assets. Ajay: "So what do we do now? We need that money." Amma: "We need to rethink our strategy. Selling off more assets is not a sustainable solution. We should bring in external financial advisors to help us restructure the company." Amma's suggestion was met with some resistance, but ultimately the family agreed it was the best course of action. They decided to hire professional financial advisors to assess the company's situation and propose a viable recovery plan. The financial advisors began by conducting a thorough audit of the company's finances. They identified key areas of mismanagement and inefficiency and proposed several changes to streamline operations and reduce costs. Financial advisor: "We need to implement strict financial controls and cut unnecessary expenses. Additionally, we should explore new revenue streams and possibly seek strategic partnerships." Amma played a crucial role in convincing the family to support the advisor's recommendations. She emphasized the importance of trust and unity in overcoming the crisis. Amma: "We must trust the experts we've hired and work together to implement these changes. It's the only way we can save the company and protect our future." With the advisor's help, the company slowly began to recover. The new financial controls and strategic decisions started to show positive results. The family also began to heal their fractured relationships. understanding the importance of working together. Despite the positive strides made in recovering the company, Mrs. Agyapong and Ajay's insatiable love for money resurfaced. They decided they needed a significant amount of cash for personal projects. Ignoring the potential consequences, they planned to take a substantial sum from the company's funds. Mr. Mensah, their financial advisor, strongly advised against this decision, highlighting the severe impact it would have on the company's fragile recovery. Mr. Mensah, if you take this money out now, it will cripple the company. All the progress we've made will be undone. Ajay, we understand the risks, but this is something we need to do. Mrs. Agyapong, we'll find a way to manage. The company will survive. Frustrated by their refusal to heed his advice, Mr. Mensah felt he could no longer continue under these circumstances. The next day, he submitted his resignation letter. Mr. Mensah, I regret to inform you that I must resign from my position. My advice is being ignored, and I cannot be part of decisions that will harm the company. Amma was devastated by Mr. Mensah's resignation. She wept bitterly, knowing deep down that he was right. However, she felt powerless to change her mother and brother's minds. News of the financial advisor's resignation and the planned withdrawal of funds spread quickly through the family, sparking outrage and concern. An emergency meeting was called. Appia, this is insane. We finally have things under control, and now you want to destroy everything for your personal gain. Asabia, this isn't what we should be doing. The company and Daddy's legacy should come first. Amma, we're making a huge mistake. We need to stop this now. Despite the heated arguments, Mrs. Agyapong and Ajay remained adamant about their decision. Amma, feeling helpless, realized the gravity of their actions, but was unable to convince them otherwise. One day, Mrs. Agyapong returned home and was met with a foul smell. She discovered that her husband had soiled himself again. Filled with anger and frustration, she decided she could no longer tolerate the situation. She ordered the house servant to move Mr. Agyapong to the boys' quarters, making it clear that this would be his new home. Mrs. Agyapong, take him to the boys' quarters. That will be his new home. I can't tolerate this nonsense anymore. The servant, hesitant but obedient, moved Mr. Agyapong to the small, isolated quarters at the back of the house. When Amma came home and found out what her mother had done, she was horrified. She immediately confronted her mother. Amma, Mother, how could you do this? Father doesn't belong in the boys' quarters. He's sick and needs our care. Mrs. Agyapong, Amma, I can't let him mess up the living room like that. It's disgusting and intolerable. Amma, tears streaming down her face, ran to the boys' quarters to comfort her father. She found him lying on a small bed, looking more fragile and defeated than ever. Amma, Daddy, I'm so sorry. I'm here for you. I won't let you be treated like this. Amma was the only one who truly cared about Mr. Agyapong's well-being. She made sure he was clean, fed, and as comfortable as possible. Despite her efforts, it was clear that her father's spirit was breaking under the weight of neglect and isolation. Meanwhile, Mrs. Agyapong continued to indulge in her newfound freedom and relationship with her boyfriend, Kwesi. She spent lavishly on him, their outings and group meetings. Her church projects also received substantial donations, draining more of the family's resources. Often, she wouldn't come home at night, leaving Amma to shoulder all the responsibilities. Desperate to change the situation, Amma reached out to her siblings once more, hoping they would finally see the gravity of their father's condition and come to his aid. Amma, please, we need to do something about father. He can't stay in the boys' quarters. He needs proper care and attention. Ajay, Ama, we've been through this. We have our own lives to live. Appia, I told you before, our futures matter too. We can't keep sacrificing everything. Asabir, it's not fair, but we can't change Mother's mind. One night, unable to sleep, Amma decided to visit her father to check on him and offer some comfort. As she walked through the quiet house, she heard faint noises coming from her mother's room. Curiosity and concern compelled her to get closer and listen. To her horror, she realized that the sounds were of her mother and Kwesi, the so-called driver, engaged in an affair. Shocked and filled with anger, Amma couldn't hold back. She burst into the room, finding her mother and Kwesi naked and in a compromising position. "Ma, what is going on here? How could you do this, mother?" Mrs. Agyapong and Kwesi quickly tried to cover themselves, but the damage was already done. The room was filled with a tense silence as Mrs. Agyapong struggled to find words. Mrs. Agyapong, "Amma, this isn't what it looks like. You don't understand. I have needs, and Kwesi has been there for me when no one else has." "Amma, how could you say that? Father is lying sick in the next room and you're here with him. This is betrayal on the highest level." Kwesi, "Amma, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. Get out of this house right now." Kwesi hurriedly dressed and left the room, knowing he had no place in this argument. Mrs. Agyapong, "Amma, you have to understand, I've been lonely and stressed. I needed someone to turn to." "Amma, lonely? Stressed? What about father? He's the one who's truly suffering, and you've completely abandoned him. You've spent money recklessly, neglected your responsibilities. And now this?" Mrs. Agyapong, "I've done what I had to do to survive. You think it's easy taking care of this family and the business?" "Amma, no, but this isn't the way to handle it. You've let everyone down, especially father." After the shocking discovery, Amma's anger and hurt were palpable. However, before she could leave the room, Mrs. Agyapong issued a diary warning. Mrs. Agyapong, "Amma, if you breathe a word of this to anyone, you will no longer be my daughter. Do you understand?" Amma was taken aback by the severity of her mother's threat. The weight of the ultimatum hung heavily in the air. "Amma, mother, you can't be serious. You expect me to keep this a secret? You've betrayed our family and our father." Mrs. Agyapong, "I am serious. If this news gets out, it will ruin everything. The family, the company, our reputation. If you care about any of that, you'll keep quiet." "Amma, what about father? What about his dignity? Doesn't that matter to you at all?" Mrs. Agyapong, "Of course it does, but we have to manage this discreetly. The last thing we need is a scandal." Amma was torn. She knew her mother's actions were indefensible, but the threat of being disowned weighed heavily on her. She needed to find a way to protect her father and uphold the family's dignity without tearing everything apart. Amma realized that something had to be done. One day, when everyone was out of the house, she gathered some boys from the neighborhood and carefully moved her father into a vehicle. She drove straight to her family house in the village, determined to seek the care he truly needed. Upon arriving, Amma was met by her relatives, who were both surprised and concerned by the sight of Mr. Agyapong. "Amma, Uncle Kwame, Auntie Ifwa, I've brought father here because his situation has become unbearable. The medicines and treatments in the city are no longer helping. I believe that with your help, we can treat him with herbs and traditional remedies." The family gathered around, listening intently as Amma explained the dire situation. The neglect, the betrayal, and the failing health of her father weighed heavily on her heart. Uncle', "Amma, you did the right thing by bringing him here. We'll do everything we can to help him. Our traditional remedies have helped many before, and we'll make sure he receives the best care." The family immediately took action. They prepared a comfortable room for Mr. Agyapong and began to gather herbs and traditional medicines known for their healing properties. The village healer, renowned for his knowledge of herbal treatments, was brought in to oversee the care. "Healer, we will start with a cleansing regimen to rid his body of any toxins. Then we will use specific herbs to strengthen his liver and kidneys." Amma felt a sense of relief as her father was finally surrounded by people who genuinely cared for his well-being. As the family gathered to discuss Mr. Agyapong's condition, many members expressed their willingness to help. They remembered how he had supported them when he was rich and healthy and felt it was their duty to repay his kindness. "Uncle Kwame, Agyapong has done so much for us. It's our turn to take care of him now. Let's all contribute what we can to ensure he gets the best care." Most family members nodded in agreement, pledging their support. However, a few grumbled, feeling that Agyapong could have done more for them in the past. These dissenters chose to leave and made no contributions to his well-being. "Cousin Yao, he should have done more when he had the chance. I won't be contributing." Auntie Akosua, "It's disappointing, but we can't force everyone to help. We'll do our best with what we have." As the evening drew to a close and the family dispersed, Mr. Agyapong called the herbalist to his side. The herbalist, who had been diligently preparing treatments and overseeing his care, was surprised by the request. "Mr. Agyapong, herbalist, I need to tell you something important. The truth is, I am not actually sick. I am a healthy man. I wanted to spend some weeks here to see how my family would treat me." The herbalist was taken aback by the revelation. He had believed, like everyone else, that Mr. Agyapong was gravely ill. "Herbalist, you mean to say this was all a test? I am shocked. But why would you do this, Mr. Agyapong? I needed to know who truly cares for me and who is here only for the money. It's a way to see their true nature. Now that I see the genuine love and support from most of my family, I feel reassured." The herbalist's agreement. After processing the information, the herbalist nodded in understanding. He saw the wisdom in Mr. Agyapong's plan and agreed to continue the ruse. Herbalist, "I understand, Mr. Agyapong. I will keep your secret and continue as if nothing has changed. You will have your time to observe." In the following days, Mr. Agyapong quietly observed his family's behavior. He saw the genuine efforts of those who cared deeply for him and appreciated their love and support. He also noted the absence of those who had chosen not to help. It had been a month since Amma brought her father to the herbalist's place in the village. One evening, as she sat by his side, her thoughts heavy with worry, she suddenly noticed a change in her father. To her astonishment, he slowly sat up, looking strong and energetic. It was as if he had been magically restored. Overwhelmed with emotion, Amma began to cry. The sight of her father, who she believed to be gravely ill, now vibrant and healthy, was too much to take in. "Amma, Father, you're awake. You're strong again. I can't believe it." Mr. Agyapong gently held Amma's hand, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and seriousness. "Mr. Agyapong, Amma, my dear, please don't worry. I have never been sick. I pretended to be ill to see how my family and loved ones would treat me in my time of need." Amma was stunned by his words, unable to fully grasp what he was saying. "Amma, you pretended. But why, Father?" Mr. Agyapong took a deep breath, ready to explain his actions. "Mr. Agyapong, I needed to know the truth. I wanted to see who among my family and friends would stand by me out of genuine love and loyalty. and who would be driven by greed and self-interest. I didn't want my company to fall into the wrong hands after my death. He continued, his voice filled with both sorrow and resolve. Mr. Agyapong, I am fully aware of what has been happening in the city. I know how your mother and siblings have been fighting over properties and mismanaging the company. I also know about your mother's infidelity. Amma's heart ached as she listened to her father's words, realizing the depth of his pain. Amma, Father, it's been so hard watching them destroy everything. I tried to help, but they wouldn't listen. Mr. Agyapong, Amma, you have shown me what true love and dedication look like. Your sacrifices, your unwavering care, and your integrity have proven that there is at least one wise and loyal person among my children who can manage my company and continue my legacy. Mr. Agyapong sighed deeply, reflecting on the actions of his wife and other children. Despite knowing where I was, your mother and siblings never once visited me to check on my health. They were too busy fighting over properties and ruining the company. Their neglect and betrayal are clear now. He paused, looking deeply into Amma's eyes. Mr. Agyapong, Amma, you are the rightful heir to my company and properties. I have seen your strength, wisdom, and compassion. You are the one who can lead our family and preserve what I have built. Tears flowed freely down Amma's face as she absorbed her father's words. She felt a profound sense of responsibility, but also a deep gratitude for his trust in her. Amma, thank you, Father. I promise to honor your trust and do everything I can to protect and grow your legacy. News of Mr. Agyapong's miraculous recovery quickly spread across the village. Family members who had previously refused to help him when he was supposedly sick started visiting him, wearing fake smiles and pretending to care. Mr. Agyapong, however, was not fooled by their sudden change of heart. Mr. Agyapong, why are you acting as if you care now? When I was sick and dying, you insulted and abandoned me. Your hypocrisy is shameful. The chastised family members felt the sting of his words and left the scene in shame. Mr. Agyapong took this opportunity to advise the entire community about the importance of genuine love and support. Mr. Agyapong, true love and support should be unwavering. Let us always be there for one another, not just in times of prosperity, but in times of need. One evening, Mr. Agyapong decided it was time to return to Accra with Amma. They arrived late at night, and the security guard at the gate, surprised but respectful, quickly opened the gate for them. They entered the house quietly as everyone inside was asleep. As they moved through the house, Amma led her father to his room. Upon entering, they were confronted with a disgraceful scene. Mrs. Agyapong was in bed with the driver. Shocked and appalled, Amma and Mr. Agyapong stood in silence for a moment. Mrs. Agyapong, seeing her husband, "Oh my God! Is this a ghost?" She was terrified until she saw Amma stepping into the room. Realizing the truth, Mrs. Agyapong was struck with fear and shame. Amma quickly pointed out that the CCTV cameras had been capturing everything happening in the house during his absence. Mother, everything you've done has been recorded. Your infidelity, your betrayal, it's all on camera. Mrs. Agyapong was speechless, the weight of her actions crashing down on her. Mr. Agyapong, maintaining his dignity, did not say a word. He simply turned and walked out of the room, heading to the boys' quarters, the place where he had been forced to stay when he was supposedly sick. Mr. Agyapong settled into the small, modest quarters, reflecting on the events of the night. Despite the betrayal and hurt, he found solace in the fact that he now knew who truly cared for him. The next morning at dawn, Mrs. Agyapong, overwhelmed with shame, packed a few of her belongings, and left the house quietly. The atmosphere in the house was tense as the first son, Ajay, began blaming their mother for the family's troubles, while the second son, Appia, blamed Ajay for their financial mismanagement. Ajay, this is all mother's fault. Her infidelity and poor decisions ruined everything. Appia, don't pin this all on her. You're the one who wasted company funds on personal luxuries. Before the argument could escalate, Mr. Agyapong intervened. Enough. Blaming each other will not solve anything. We must focus on moving forward and making things right. The apology. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Agyapong returned, accompanied by church pastors, elders, and family members. They came to apologize on her behalf, hoping to mend the fractured family. Upon their arrival, Mr. Agyapong had prepared to present the evidence of his wife's infidelity and the children's misbehavior, captured on CCTV. Mr. Agyapong. Before we discuss anything further, I want you all to see the truth. He played the videos, showing the entire room the extent of Mrs. Agyapong's betrayal and the children's actions. The room was silent, filled with the uncomfortable reality of their behavior. Mrs. Agyapong was sweating, deeply ashamed. As the videos ended, the church pastors, elders, and family members found themselves without words or reason to defend her actions. They quietly left the room, unable to face the shame. Mrs. Agyapong, I am truly sorry. She gathered her belongings and attempted to take one of the family cars, but Mr. Agyapong stopped her. Mr. Agyapong, you will not use any of my cars. You have sold many of them already. Find another way. A few days later, Mr. Agyapong brought in his lawyer, Mr. Owusu, to finalize his will. He made it clear that Amma, due to her unwavering loyalty and dedication, would be the heir to his company and properties. Mr. Agyapong, Amma, you have proven yourself to be the rightful heir. I trust you to continue my legacy with integrity and love. As the legal processes were completed, Mr. Agyapong reflected on the importance of making proper measures to ensure the continuity of one's legacy. With Amma now officially in charge, the family began to work towards rebuilding their lives and the company. Her leadership brought a renewed sense of purpose and stability. The company, once on the brink of collapse, started to recover under her guidance. Amma's journey from devoted daughter to rightful heir was a testament to the power of love, integrity, and resilience. She led the family and the company with a commitment to honor her father's legacy and ensure its continuity for future generations. Through trials and tribulations, the Agyapong family emerged stronger, united by the lessons learned and the unwavering bond that now held them together. They looked forward to a future filled with promise, carrying forward the legacy of a man who had tested their hearts and found the true heir among them. Mr. Agyapong's story brings to mind another very successful and wealthy man from Ghana, specifically from Koforidua. This man too faced a tragic fate that mirrors the struggles seen in the Agyapong family. This man passed away during the COVID-19 pandemic. Despite his immense success and influence, he has not been buried to this day. The reason for this delay is the ongoing disputes among his children and extended family over his properties. This infighting has not only tarnished his reputation, but is also gradually collapsing his once thriving business empire. This man was highly successful, with strong connections to both current and former presidents of Ghana, who even attended his one-week celebration. His life was a testament to hard work and dedication, yet the legacy he left behind is now in jeopardy because of familial greed. But ever since I left Ghana, I received information that he has not been buried, all because of the family's greed. Reflecting on these stories, it becomes clear how crucial it is for families to unite and cherish the legacies left behind, rather than allowing greed to destroy what was built with love and hard work. May we all have family and children who will not fight over our wealth and properties when we are gone, but instead unite to embrace and continue our legacies. Both the stories of Mr. Agyapong and the wealthy man from Koforidua underscore the importance of proper estate planning and fostering a sense of unity and responsibility among family members. Ensuring that your legacy is preserved requires not just legal measures, but also instilling values of respect and cooperation in your loved ones. In closing, these tales serve as a poignant reminder of the fragility of legacies. They urge us to look beyond material wealth and focus on the enduring values of love, unity, and respect. By doing so, we can ensure that our life's work continues to flourish, bringing honor to our name long after we are gone. May we all strive to leave behind not just wealth, but a legacy of love and unity that will inspire and guide future generations. Thank you for watching this story on An Ant's Web of Tales. We would love to hear from you. Please share, comment, and let us know where you are watching from. Your feedback and engagement mean the world to us. Did you know that over 90% of people who watch our videos don't subscribe? We kindly plead with you to hit that subscribe button and join our community. By subscribing, you'll never miss out on our latest stories and updates. Thank you for being a part of An Ant's Web of Tales. Together, let's keep these stories alive and thriving.